Welcome to the Harmony in a Hurry podcast. We are Caroline and Anna, mindfulness enthusiasts, exploring ways to weave a little bit of mindfulness into our busy routine. Today we are talking with Jude Warren. Jude is a guide in conscious living and dying who helps individuals and communities navigate life's transitions with mindfulness and compassion. From eco-friendly burial practices to advocating for human composting in Australia, she inspires meaningful conversations and deeper connections to life, death, and the earth. Welcome, Jude, to our podcast, Harmony in a Hurry. We are so happy to have you here. And just to get us started, the first question that we normally ask our guests is, what does mindfulness mean to you, or how do you practice mindfulness in your life?
It's a bit of a changing one for me with where I'm at and what I'm doing. It's been a long path of many years of yoga and meditation practice and being very much routine in my life. It's adapted over time with where I am in the world and how I'm, who I'm interacting with. At the moment, I feel much more aware of things when I'm out in nature and actually moving. So for me, currently, right now, the breath and the awareness and the mindfulness comes much more when I'm just walking out in nature. And however I'm interacting with that, it could just be grounding myself on the ground. It could be touching trees and observing and just coming back to my breath. And then there's a stillness and then there's a connection. And I think that we are nature. We're an integral part of nature. And when we're stuck inside sort of four walls like this, I don't find that connection so deeply. So yeah, that's what I've come to understand about myself.
And do you find that when you're connecting in, when you're walking around in nature, and you're in that mindfulness space, that you're processing a lot, and even if you're not necessarily focusing on it because you're focusing on the present, but it helps you just move through things?
Yeah, it does. It certainly, if there's say like an upset or there's any extreme emotions, going back into nature kind of rebalances things.
Lovely.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. My background is I'm from the UK originally, and I came to Australia back end of 2006, and I've been living in the Blue Mountains on and off since 2009 in New South Wales. I am a community nurse by background, about nearly 30 years or more. Yeah. And I've always loved community, and I just love that connection with people. And so particularly towards palliative care and end of life care, people in their own homes, honouring that. And in the last few years, I returned to the UK and then returned back to Australia, it's taken a slightly different track for me, working in a slightly different way. Yeah.
And I know that one of your interests is, or one of the things that you do is a project about living and dying consciously. How does that play in your day-to-day, and how do you look at death or living and dying consciously from the mindfulness point of view?
Yeah. Well, I guess from my years as a nurse in people's homes, we see and understand people's emotions and feelings towards end of life, and everyone's unique. Every relationship is unique. And I saw a lot of differing ways of how things were done and how fearful sometimes people were about death and dying, and also how they were so afraid that they couldn't connect. And there was a lot of different emotions coming into the situation. I had a long-term vision here in the Blue Mountains that there would be a conscious place to live and die well. Not particularly like a hospice, but more of a community place for people to consciously live and die well, whether it be in respite, whether it be end of life. will it just be people coming together to support each other with art and music and nature? Having returned to the UK and seeing how the hospices are over there, like New Zealand, they have many hospices and some of them are fantastic, but it's very medicalised. And I'm feeling more and more that, like birth, death isn't a medical event most of the time, unless it's a traumatic situation. It is a part of nature and it's part of our life cycle. So the more that we connect in community, in conscious connection to support each other, I feel that the more authentically we'll come back to ourselves and die well.
I just think that being of a nurse as well, that, if you can help someone transition as well and support them and their loved ones, and that is like one of the greatest gifts that you can give me. So that's really beautiful that's something that you've always done, and you've got that long-term vision to create that space. So it makes it more of a warm experience instead of a cold clinical one, even if you try and do your best in the hospital settings.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have, many years experience as a nurse, but I've actually kind of taken that hat off slightly more now. And it's more connecting people into conversation. So in the UK, our community connections to do projects to raise dying awareness. And returning here into the Blue Mountains in October this year, I've been fortunate enough to join a community organisation and supporting volunteers to go out and support people, to perhaps support them in their social aspect of, whether it be conversation, sharing the story. And I think that's one aspect of living and dying well, that everyone has a story. And I think their story needs to be heard, whether it's just verbally or whether it's written or whether it's in fiction. I think that's a very important part of all our legacy to be in existence here. One of the places that set off my conversations last year was in near Asheville in North Carolina, and it's called the Conscious Center of Living and Dying. And it was set about by a young man, Ethan, who had a glioblastoma, a brain tumor, and he wanted to die in the community. He didn't want to die at home. So he asked Dr. Aditi Sethi, beautiful Indian American doctor, hired a doctor to help him set that about. And she in turn has opened the center, which resonates so deeply on all levels for me. It's literally what I've envisaged for a long time. And it's people coming together. It could be some people making beautiful food, some people giving a personal care. We do still need that medical, holistic, integrative approach. So there will be maybe medications needed sometimes. And I am very conscious over here in Australia now, we've got assisted dying legislation commanding, so that opening a whole wider spectrum of conversation.
And so why do you think we don't really talk about how we want to die or what our choices are until when we are pretty much incapacitated to make any decisions?
Yeah, I think there's many reasons. I think there's a lot to do with the structure of health, the way that is currently geared to take the choices out of people's will. As a nurse of many years, it took me a while. It's taken me a couple of years to step back and go, I don't need to fix this person. As a nurse, you're told you have to go in and do this and do that and fix it. So you have to kind of take a step back and go, they're going to fix it themselves. And they've got this. And you have to empower people and support people in a different way. And the same with doctors. I think there is great development. I think things are shifting. I've been listening to some really interesting conversations and podcasts with doctors taking a different stance. But a lot of the time, people turn to doctors or medical information and ask them for the answer when they know the answer deep down themselves. So I feel there's more and more around the world, these beautiful conversations happening and these connections happening in communities that people are slowing down to actually talk and listen. Mm.
Do you feel that if people were living more consciously, they would accept death in a different way and they would maybe create that inclusiveness for their family, maybe getting advice from doctors, but also making their own decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. We all have a time to live and time to die. And when we understand that, we sometimes, and it isn't always an easy journey. I think we've all had times in our life where we feel like it, that dark night of the soul, that we feel like, goodness, how am I going to get through this time? How am I going to get through my next steps and make these decisions? And I think there is something very valuable about befriending your fear.
Mhm.
So when we understand that, we can just say, let our fear be our fabulous friend, let it just acknowledge it and say, yeah, hey, this is happening to me. And then we can develop that relationship with those feelings and ourselves in a different way.
And sorry, so you said as well, do you have these conversations as well with the person's family or their close-knit circle? So then you can also assess where they are. So then they can also support the person together because,
Yeah, every conversation's unique. So when I started the online conversation, that's been more with women that I've connected with around the world on a level. I suppose now my role really back here in the mountains is as a volunteer coordinator is I meet and greet these clients and their families. And yeah, I sometimes ask those questions that are maybe not being asked before. Sometimes, nursing staff don't have time. And it depends where the person is. I've recently gone over the mountains to Lithgow to meet new clients over there, and they've been on the inpatient unit. So it's finding that time and spaciousness to talk. Yeah. So we have to meet them wherever they are. So I'm really not in a clinical role as well at the moment, which is interesting because you don't always need to know the past history medically of people to see them where they're at.
Mhm.
And that comes with being mindful and sitting, the touch, that connection. Yeah. And mindfulness practice over years leads us to intuitively understand that other person might need. You might not get it right. That person might not want you to hug. But you have to be brave enough to try it sometimes. And then the person goes, oh, no, that's not what I want. Just go. No. We have to be, sometimes when we step into the place and support people, we don't always get it right. I think we can all share a conversation that we've had with a complete stranger and, you come up like a train trip and you get into a conversation with somebody you've never met and probably won't ever meet again. But you share things with that person that you probably wouldn't share with somebody else. And that sometimes I believe is the essence of, somebody listening to the story. And that person, for instance, I know one lady just spoken to the volunteer and said, please don't write that down. They're writing a brief story of the life, which is amazing. There's a lot of biography, volunteering that's going on in New South Wales. So I'm just learning that aspect in this role. So it's quite exciting. Yeah.
And do you know where people can find out more about organizations like that? How do you look for them?
So New South Wales Palliative Care have volunteer managers around.
Yeah.
So the whole, certainly in New South Wales and beyond, I'm sure all around the world. So in the hospice where I worked in the UK, we had bedside companions there as well, and they went out into community similarly to do social support for people. So it's something that is a non-medical offering. If they're well enough, they can be taken out for a trip somewhere. Beautiful woman I met the last couple of weeks, 84-year-old lady. She has connected deeply with Indigenous elders in the mountains in recent times. They've passed now, and she really wants to sit on this particular area overlooking the bush here in the mountains. So we connected up with a great volunteer last week, and he's going to be able to do that for her. And just how special is that? And
So be able to grant her that wish.
yeah, it's great. Yeah, right with the a lot of aspects to it. But then there's another part which I know you both are aware of, that I come back and I looked around at the cemeteries in New South Wales in Wentworth Falls, for instance, where I've been living. And I go, well, what's happening about the natural burial sites here in this land? So I've been connecting with people who have been advocating change, and I set up a forum here in Wentworth Falls back in November called EcoRef, Exploring Natural Death Methods. So basically, the two options that people have at the moment here in Australia really are traditional burial, which are very expensive, and there's limited land, and a lot of toxins go back into the ground because of the nature of the materials used to put into the ground with the person. And then the other option is cremation, which is the more popular choice because it's cheaper and more easily available. But the carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere from cremation is tremendous. So human composting is pretty much a sacred way. And when I mean sacred, it means it's done very mindfully with the person and their family and their loved ones in mind. And it's a process that's first of all been developed in with Recompose. They pioneered it back in 2016, and Katrina, remember her last name, she's done a lot of talk on YouTube, on TEDx, and then other people are particularly around that Seattle area. They are building up the business of natural organic reduction. Return Home is now biggest. You've got 74 pods for people that are able to decompose. They mix straw with alfalfa. And it's a process that's done over 3 months gently. And then in that time, people can come and visit their loved ones in a very, very beautiful space. So I can give you some links for that. And EcoRest has just keyed up a virtual tour with them. And we've got the first Terra conference called TerraCon, which is Terramation, another term for human composting, happening over in Tacoma shortly. And I've got the first talk of the year at the end of February, 26th of February, was a lady called Chewie Davidson. She's up from Earthly Remains. She's coming to help us find the path to help us get this legislation set up. We can become the solution. Simply, when we go back into the earth, we help the carbon offset and we help soil regeneration. So when we make ourselves into compost, there's a richness there. And equally, like people want to share their ashes with family, people can do that, and it can be shared in so many ways. You know, somebody have a tree planted, or it could be shared amongst other people, a family or friends, in a community garden.
That would be beautiful.
We are organic. We don't have straight lines. We are not meant to be in contained boxes.
That's be much more harmonious, I think.
And community. It's up in the coast where Anna is. We've got tender funerals, and they've been instrumental in New South Wales, really supporting people wanting to bring people together in community. We've got paper about funerals up in Murwillumbah, and we've got sacred that funeral in Lismore. We've got people that are already doing this, and we've got funeral celebrants here in the mountains from Pikaluna who are understanding that it's a community event, and to celebrate the life, people are doing a lot more celebrations of their life before they die. And so I think the conversations are growing, and I think it's growing. I'm only just a little part of it. I've started with my rest, but I'm kind of bringing all the people together.
But that, I think, as well, when you can do things like that and have those mindful conversations, even if it's still obviously very emotional, but it's giving people the chance to really connect with their emotions instead of shutting it off. And then everyone starts to be able to process. So when the time does come, not saying that it's easy, but it's more sort of graceful, and probably in some ways a bit more tender.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jude, for coming and talking to us about this important subject today. We really appreciate your time.
Right. Thank you very much, guys. It's been lovely. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for this episode. If you're intrigued by this topic, check out our show notes for plenty of links to explore further and ways to connect with Jude. See you next time.